During her second year at university, Hana encountered an enigmatic stranger who captured her heart. She later discovered his true nature. He was a werewolf. Soon after, she found herself expecting a child. To prevent complications, Hana chose to educate herself about pregnancy and delivery through self-study at home. Her partner would frequently venture into the wilderness, returning with fresh game to nourish her. Everything proceeded without incident, and Hana delivered twins, a werewolf son and daughter. She believed their small family could finally enjoy peaceful happiness, but fate had other plans. One tragic day, her beloved died without warning, his body callously dumped with the refuse. Despite Hana's anguished screams in the torrential downpour, she never had the opportunity to bid him farewell. Clutching his identification card photograph, Hana resolved to nurture their children alone. Yet single parenthood proved overwhelming for the young student. Hana lacked any childcare experience, and her offspring differed from ordinary human infants, leaving her unable to seek guidance from other mothers. She depended entirely on literature to master motherhood. When illness struck the children, she wrestled with whether to visit a pediatrician or veterinarian. Ultimately, she consulted a physician by phone. Fortunately, the twins had merely ingested some desiccant packets and recovered completely. Her late husband's savings provided temporary stability for Hana's household. However, as months passed, her children's distinctive characteristics became increasingly apparent. Their lupin nature intensified steadily. They began destroying household furnishings with their teeth constantly. This behavior left Hana feeling more overwhelmed than before, and tending to both youngsters drained her completely. She would collapse during brief respites, and persistent sleep loss aged her prematurely. One afternoon, her daughter Yuki desperately wanted fresh air. Having no alternative, Hana escorted both children to a nearby park, concealing them beneath hooded garments to avoid scrutiny. During their return journey, Yuki engaged in conflict with someone's companion animal. The confrontation horrified Hana, prompting her to gather her children and flee immediately. Following that incident, she refused to venture outdoors with them again. However, nighttime brought the children's wolfish vocalizations, generating neighbor complaints. Since the apartment prohibited animals, their landlord threatened eviction unless the disturbances ceased. After considerable deliberation, Hana chose relocation. After all, werewolves couldn't genuinely integrate into human civilization. One sunny morning, the family relocated to rural countryside. Throughout the journey, their property agent persistently discouraged Hana, warning of the numerous hardships rural living would present. Nevertheless, Hana remained determined to provide her offspring with superior surroundings. Eventually, they reached a deteriorating residence. Although structurally compromised, it maintained functional utilities. They could produce for sustenance. Most crucially, no other inhabitants lived within several hundred meters. Yuki adored their new environment. Countryside existence filled her with enthusiasm and vitality. Conversely, Ame reacted completely differently. The insects terrified him, and he longed to return to their previous dwelling. Observing this, Hana immediately attempted to console her son. The aged dwelling contained necessary equipment. However, restoration proved extremely challenging. Floorboards crumbled underfoot, and ceiling plaster fell at the slightest touch. What troubled Hana most were the severe roof leaks during storms. Fortunately, Hana possessed remarkable practical skills, and through her efforts, the dilapidated structure gradually resembled a genuine home. Eventually, Hana's funds diminished, prompting her to attempt vegetable cultivation. She purchased numerous gardening manuals from local bookshops. During this period, she also shared werewolf folklore with her children. These tales featured two werewolf youngsters whose transformations frightened away all other children. Hana employed these narratives educationally, instructing her offspring never to shape-shift before others. For the children, storytelling proved more influential than harsh discipline. Soon they commenced planting, but merely following textbook instructions resulted in failure. Consequently, Hana had to restart completely. Just then, Ame approached weeping, bearing raccoon scratches across his face. Hana prioritized treating his injuries. Yuki subsequently ridiculed her younger sibling for his fearfulness and vulnerability. Following this event, Hana reflected deeply. She realized that raising them as human children might prove ineffective. At that instant, she regretted never questioning her husband about werewolf child-rearing methods. Therefore, she began studying lupin behavior patterns. She even accompanied her children into the mountains for hunting expeditions. Surprisingly, Yuki demonstrated natural talent. She moved effortlessly through woodland terrain and successfully captured small prey. Ame, however, responded entirely differently. From the moment they entered the forest, he felt distressed and eventually sat beneath a tree sobbing. He couldn't comprehend why wolves in children's stories were invariably antagonists, perpetually hunted and destroyed by humans. But Yuki told him she genuinely appreciated wolves, viewing them as companions. Their mother's explanation helped Ame perceive things differently. Upon returning home, they discovered their entire crop had perished. An elderly neighbor named Nirasaki, who had been observing Hana for some time, finally decided to offer assistance. The following day, guided by Nirasaki's directions, Hana recultivated all the soil. Days continued passing, and Hana remained exhausted daily, yet she never dared relax her efforts. Thankfully, her dedication eventually succeeded. Soon, 2 additional neighbors visited. They escorted Hana to select vegetable plants and instructed her systematically in cultivation techniques. Gradually, increasing numbers of neighbors came calling. They were genuinely impressed that Hana had managed to endure. Most young adults wouldn't select rural living. Their compassion provided Hana with warmth she had never previously experienced. Harvest time arrived quickly, and Hana's labor finally produced results. To demonstrate appreciation, she delivered freshly gathered potatoes to neighboring households. However, everyone complained about wild creatures destroying their own crops. During their discussion, everyone noticed that Hana's potatoes remained completely undamaged by wildlife. They inquired about her methods. Hana merely smiled mysteriously, though privately she suspected Yuki might have influenced this outcome. All the neighbors supported this single parent. Noticing her inadequate refrigeration, they delivered a larger unit the very next day. Although Nirasaki struggled with emotional expression and possessed a somewhat difficult temperament, he provided Hana with the most substantial assistance. That evening, Hana reflected on recent years, and despite the difficulties, her dwelling had finally become a true home. Winter arrived soon, blanketing everything in deep snow. The 3 family members leaped into it, playing carefree. Later, they ventured into the wilderness. Yuki and Ame completely unleashed themselves, racing across snow-covered fields with pure joy. Since motherhood began, Hana had never experienced such happiness. Finally, all 3 collapsed into the snow, thoroughly exhausted. While departing, Ame became fascinated by a bird near the riverbank. Following his lupin instincts, he seized the creature, but slipped and plunged into the freezing water. In the frigid current, he called desperately for his mother. His strength rapidly failed, and he disappeared beneath the surface. Hana heard his distant cries and rushed over as quickly as possible. Thankfully, at the final moment, Yuki managed to extract him from the water. Seeing Ame lying motionless on the ground, Hana panicked and embraced him tightly. Fortunately, Ame regained consciousness and began describing his hunting adventure. But Hana was already weeping. This marked the first time Yuki had witnessed her tears. Hana remained silent, simply holding both children close in her arms. This was also her first experience of such overwhelming terror. Winter concluded and spring emerged, beginning a new year. Yuki had reached school age. However, Hana preferred avoiding human society exposure. Nevertheless, after extensive pleading from Yuki, Hana finally consented to school attendance, provided she never transformed before others. During the journey, Yuki skipped excitedly. Upon arriving at school, however, she felt alienated. She had never encountered so many people previously. Hana remained in the background, encouraging her. Fortunately, Yuki adapted rapidly and befriended classmates within days. Meanwhile, Ame accompanied his mother into the forest daily. He wished to learn more about lupin existence. To support him, Hana secured zoo employment. With colleague assistance, they met an actual wolf. Hana questioned the wolf about young wolf development, but received no response. Still, she wouldn't abandon her efforts. She planned to continue working while learning about nature's patterns, enabling her to share this knowledge with her son. As time progressed, Yuki's school experience became increasingly challenging. She enjoyed handling serpents and collecting animal bones and carcasses. Despite her innocent intentions, other students couldn't tolerate this behavior. At home, Yuki shared these experiences with her mother, and Hana couldn't suppress her laughter. That night, Hana remained awake, sewing a small dress, hoping it would help her daughter integrate better at school. Soon, Ame also reached school age, but he differed completely from Yuki. His withdrawn personality hindered friendship formation, and older children frequently bullied him. Each time, Yuki defended him. Time passed swiftly. Ame quickly advanced to 3rd grade, and Yuki had grown considerably taller. However, Ame, who struggled academically, often avoided classes. He would consistently seek that aging wolf and frequently wandered alone on outdoor excursions. One day, a new student named Fuji joined Yuki's class. Fuji found Yuki intriguing. He claimed he detected an animal odor emanating from her. From that point, Yuki began acting completely different. She deliberately avoided Fuji. Fuji felt confused. Other classmates informed him that Yuki had previously been very cheerful. Fuji concluded he must have offended her somehow and attempted to discuss it with Yuki. However, Yuki refused to see him. Eventually, Fuji's persistence created a confrontation. In a moment of panic, Yuki knocked him down. She couldn't control it anymore. She transformed into a werewolf. The school immediately contacted both families. Fuji sustained an ear scratch, but Yuki remained silent. Hana encouraged Yuki to apologize. However, Fuji's mother was hostile and refused to dismiss the matter, creating tension. Suddenly, Fuji spoke up, claiming it wasn't Yuki who injured him. It was the wolf. Hearing Fuji's statement, his mother decided to abandon the issue. After school, Yuki felt mistreated and wept loudly in their vehicle. Hana could only embrace her tightly. Upon reaching home, they discovered Fuji had left study materials before quickly departing. In subsequent days, Fuji continued delivering items, but strangely, the two seemed to avoid encountering each other. Until one day, when Hana seized the opportunity during Yuki's absence to invite Fuji inside their home. She even mentioned the incident where Yuki had harmed him. However, Fuji maintained that the wolf had caused the wound. Hana felt grateful for his actions and curiously asked if he disliked wolves. Fuji immediately denied this. The following morning, as Yuki prepared for school, she found Fuji waiting at their entrance. He had come to reconcile, even displaying his still-healing ear scar. Feeling remorseful, Yuki gladly accepted his gesture. Under Hana's observant gaze, the two made peace. At that moment, Aim was also preparing to leave. He claimed he was visiting his teacher, but the direction he took wasn't towards school. Curious, Hana decided to follow him. It turned out Aim's teacher wasn't human, but an elderly fox. The fox also served as the forest guardian. Under the fox's tutelage, Aim had acquired numerous survival abilities. He had also witnessed natural phenomena he'd never seen before. Momentarily, Hana felt like he had matured, like he had developed a distinct understanding of the natural environment. He even invited Yuki to join him in the forest and acquire these skills. However, Yuki believed they were humans and should attend school instead. The siblings disagreed and began arguing. Their argument escalated into physical combat in their werewolf forms. They didn't cease until both were covered in wounds and bruises. Hana examined a photograph of her deceased husband. She didn't know what to do because both of their choices were valid. In following days, Aim ventured into the mountains increasingly often. He informed Hana that the old fox had been wounded and didn't have much time remaining. He wanted to assume the forest guardian role. However, Hana opposed this idea. The next day, Aim begged his sister to remain home and care for Hana. However, Yuki didn't take it seriously and departed for school. The meteorological service announced that a severe storm was anticipated over the coming days. Therefore, Hana and Aim began advanced preparations. Meanwhile, the school canceled afternoon sessions, and all students awaited parental pickup. After receiving the school's call, Hana prepared to collect Yuki. However, at that moment, Aim had already departed the house. With no other choice, Hana went to the mountains to search for her son first. She looked in numerous locations but couldn't locate him. Suddenly, there was movement ahead, and she rushed toward the sound. Instead of Aim, however, she encountered an enormous brown bear. Hana froze in terror. Fortunately, the bear didn't attack her. It simply departed quietly with its offspring. She continued deeper into the forest. However, the rain-soaked earth was extremely treacherous. Combined with her exhaustion from extensive walking, Hana lost her balance and tumbled down an incline. She eventually lost consciousness on the forest floor. At school, only Yuki and Fuji remained waiting. The storm outside made Yuki anxious. However, what puzzled her more was why Fuji's mother hadn't collected him. Fuji finally revealed his family situation. His mother had remarried and was expecting. Fuji believed that once the baby arrived, she would abandon him. Yuki suddenly felt sympathetic. However, Fuji didn't appear concerned. He thought he could survive perfectly well independently. She admired his confidence and his fearless honesty. After prolonged silence, she transformed into her werewolf form. To her surprise, Fuji showed no alarm whatsoever. It turned out Fuji had known her secret throughout. He promised to help protect this secret. Meanwhile, Hana remained unconscious. However, in her mind, she found herself in a flower meadow. Her husband appeared there too. After this extended separation, they embraced each other with deep yearning. In that instant, Hana felt complete happiness. However, when her husband mentioned the children, she suddenly remembered. Aim was still missing. Her husband assured her that Aim would be fine because he had already matured. Unlike Yuki, Aim had chosen to return to nature. He gently carried Hana down the mountain, then turned and departed without looking back. Hana awakened and called out to her son with all her power. However, Aim had already transformed into his wolf form. He looked back at Hana one final time, then ran confidently toward the mountain peak. At the summit, he released a powerful howl. At that precise moment, the sun began rising, illuminating the misty forest. Though Hana's eyes filled with tears, her heart swelled with pride because she supported every choice her children made. Many years passed in an instant. Yuki smoothly advanced to middle school. However, Hana still cherished living in that isolated, aged house. Occasionally, she would study the photograph of her late husband. She felt completely serene. She enjoyed the mountain air that flowed through the window and listened to the wolf howls echoing from the forest. It was everything she had always desired. Whenever Hana reflected on the past decade or so, her face would brighten with a warm, joyful smile. It had been challenging, but every moment was worthwhile. She had shouldered the duties of two people, protecting her children's happiness through storms and hardships. She wasn't merely a single mother. She was a hero, invincible in her children's eyes. Hope Fo 2K likes and subscribe.